I have about 20 minutes to get out before the snow comes again. I have been wanting to paint outside for the last 5 days, but it has been next to impossible with almost every single day it snows, and it's not just a little bit of snow, it's a full-on snowstorm. So I decided to come here. Maybe you recognize this from day one because it's super close to my home and it's something that I'm familiar with. But in any case, I am happy that I'm able to come outdoors and paint. To be able to paint this subject before the snow gets here, I have to implement things that I've been learning from several people. There's not one way to paint watercolor correctly, but there are many strategies that can help us to paint subjects that we either are familiar or very unfamiliar with, as well as when we have little time to paint, which is the case with me at the moment. One of the things that I've learned that is very special and crucial for when I have very little time is having a value strategy. This basically means that when I'm sketching, I'm looking what is dark, what is light, and then once I figure that out, then I ask myself, is this darker than this within the light shape and within the shadow shape? In this subject, it's very easy for me to separate the two because the contrast is the sky and the snow, and then there's the trees and the house. Therefore, it's a very easy separation, and that's why I also picked this subject, because this separation was very easily identifiable. When we try to paint things that are not easily identifiable, meaning in a value strategy point of view, will only lead us to take a lot longer to paint or understand our subject. This I learned from Skip Lawrence in his book Painting Light and Shadow with Watercolor. I will leave in the description below all the links to the books or people that I will be mentioning in this video. After I established what is the light shape and the shadow shape, I start with the first wash, and this wash is gonna be one of the lightest washes, and this is to get rid of the white of the paper, and this gives me a much better understanding of the values and colors that I have on the paper, because as you can see now, that mark that I just made is quite darker than the paper itself. But in the end, when it actually dries and when I add more darks, that is actually gonna be the lightest part of my painting, as well as snow on the rooftop. I also went ahead and just used basically the same color everywhere from the sky to the roof and all the way down, because since it's gonna be lighter, it's gonna be covered by all the other darker colors. This strategy, I've seen it been used by many artists, but I think the one that I learned it from was Andy Evansen. He has a very cool 3-step method of how to paint almost any subject. In addition, he's very good at simplifying his subject by using a value study, which is basically the same thing that I did in the sketching, just without actually painting. The problem that I have with that method is that sometimes I feel like it doesn't apply to what I want to do, and also my paintings turn out looking more like his than mine. So as any advice that I give here, you should take it with a grain of salt, take what works for you, and leave the rest out. The next step is inspired by John Singer Sargent. He basically worked in layers, at least as much as I could see, but what he's truly known for is his expressive brushstrokes and their direction. With this in mind, I follow the shape or the natural guiding lines of the barn to create some sort of texture and just going over it once or twice. This is actually a very powerful technique and something that it really gets overlooked, and I'm guilty of that. So whenever I'm painting, I'm trying to keep that in mind on which direction I should make that brush stroke. And usually the form that dictates the direction. For example, this house, the brush strokes are gonna be either vertical or horizontal, depending on the texture that I want to achieve. This also applies to trees and just about anything really. Even the sky, when you want it to be nice and plain, you want to make your brush strokes to be as scarce as possible, meaning you don't want to be going over the sky several times. I really don't know why it works, but it really does make a difference when you're painting just a shape, even for example a mountain. If you paint the slope in such a way that you see the inclination of it, it will be much better than if you just paint it in a horizontal manner. Now, the last step and advice that I got was from Zbuckvic, which is somebody that is pretty much known as the best watercolorist in the world right now that is still alive. I'm actually planning to make a full video about him, but right now what I'm focusing on is reacting to what the paper is doing, or not being a slave to what you're looking at, but what your painting is resulting to be. This gives us the freedom of choice and also takes out the burden of trying to make everything as it is, which in his words, you can never compete with nature. Nature will always win. Even though my original plan was to leave the snow off the rooftop the same color as the sky, I saw that the snowstorm was getting closer and therefore the sky got darker, and as well the little house on the background wasn't really gonna do anything for my painting, so I decided to just go over it with this darker sky color and forget about it. I even had to go over the whole house once more because it was not dark enough. Of course, this is not ideal, but it is what the painting needed. In hindsight, I should have probably put the sky first before darkening the house, but luckily this time it worked out. Now that the painting is done, gotta rush home. Thanks for watching.